If you were to ask the average full-frame photographer what the safest lens to buy is, you'll most likely hear the 24 to 70 millimeter. It's not the most exciting, it's not the sharpest, and for me, it's not the lens that I use most often either, but it is a safe lens, and the reason is it covers almost everything. Lately, however, something different has been happening. We've seen variations of that traditional 24 to 70 millimeter range, and I don't just mean with Tamron's 28 to 75 millimeter, but we have 24 to 50 millimeter options that are smaller. We even have the huge 35 to 150 lenses from Tamron and Samyang. Even Sigma has the 28 to 105 millimeter that is brilliant, just quite large. But I think this might be the first zoom that I've used in a while that makes a serious argument for replacing the traditional 24 to 70. This is the new Tamron 35 to 100 millimeter f2.8 Di3 VXD, and at first it might be a little bit confusing. It overlaps with the 28 to 75 millimeter and is basically the same size, and it also overlaps with the 35 to 150 millimeter, and it doesn't directly replace either one of those. So the question you might be asking is, why does this lens exist? And the answer, at least what I think, is Tamron is redesigning the idea of what a standard zoom should be. This lens starts at 35 millimeter, and I think it's made for people who understand what you gain in the long end matters more than what you lose on the wide end. The portrait compression improves, subject separation also improves, street shooting becomes easier, and after a few days of using it, it makes you start to wonder if 100 millimeter was the focal length you always needed but just didn't realize until now. Now you might be saying, yeah, well, what about the 35 to 150 millimeter options? And the one problem with those is simply the size. When you carry around a 35 to 150 millimeter, you are carrying around a big, heavy lens that catches the attention of far more people than this lens ever will. This feels just like a 24 to 70, a light, small, usable zoom for everyday work. But unlike most 24 to 70 millimeter lenses, this one is clearly biased towards the focal lengths that portrait photographers end up using the most. Physically, this is essentially the same as the 28 to 75 millimeter, same 67 millimeter front filter thread, 600 grams with the lens hood, so just a little bit heavier. It's weather sealed, it has a focus hold and 3-step mode switch, as well as the USB-C customization support through the Tamron Lens app, which they have been recently adding features to. From a usability standpoint, it's a nicely made, comfortable zoom, with the difference being two things. The zoom is in the back like it is on most lenses versus the front on the 28 to 75 G2, and of course, it's a different focal range. If you own something like the 16 to 35 and also a 24 to 70, which many people do, that's a lot of overlap. With this 35 to 100, you could add a 16 to 35 on the wide end and a 100 to 400 on the telephoto and have coverage from 16 millimeters to 400 millimeters with just 3 excellent lenses. But even on its own, if you use your 24 to 70 millimeter for portraits, events, street work, compressed detail shots, this 35 to 100 millimeter might be an intriguing proposition. But before I show you the side-by-side comparison with the 28 to 75, I want to show you some real-world footage from this lens while I talk about today's video sponsor, Greenworks. And everything you are seeing right here is recorded on this new Tamron 35 to 100 millimeter and my Sony a7C. This is the Greenworks AI Mobot C20, a wire-free robotic mower designed for yards up to half an acre, which I've been testing on my own yard recently. What makes this interesting is that it doesn't need boundary wires. It uses something called RTK Vision 2.0, which combines satellite positioning with onboard 3D vision sensors to map your lawn with down to the inch accuracy. So instead of burying perimeter wire around your yard, you just create mowing zones directly inside of the app and the mower handles the rest. It also supports multi-zone mapping, which is useful if your yard isn't just one simple rectangle. You can create multiple mowing zones, add transport paths between them, and define no-go areas like flower beds or play areas. Once everything is mapped, it just runs on a schedule automatically, and it can even mow at night because it has lights and sensors to make that possible. The AI Mobot uses a time-of-flight camera and AI recognition to automatically detect and avoid over 200 different objects, including pets, toys, yard equipment, so that it works safely around things without constant supervision. It can handle slopes up to 45% grade thanks to its oversized front wheels, so it handled the uneven lawn in my backyard without any issues. Cut height is also electronically adjustable in the app with a range of 0.75 to 3.5 inches, and it cut my thick St. Augustine grass surprisingly well. Once you set up everything, the mower automatically returns to its charging station when needed and then resumes mowing on its own. And it's surprisingly quiet too, around 57 decibels, which means it could run outside while I'm doing other projects. And if it starts raining, no problem, because it is IPX6 water resistant and it includes built-in weather awareness, so it avoids mowing when conditions aren't ideal. If you want to see full specs or check compatibility with your yard size, I'll leave links down in the description below so that you could take a closer look at the Greenworks AI Mowbot. Alright, so all of that video was shot with the Tamron, and video performance and autofocus performance and tracking really was excellent. Now, let's talk about optics. This lens is nice and sharp wide open at 35mm. I found it sharp through the zoom range, even out at 100mm. The center of the frame is always sharp wide open, but the corners are just a little bit softer, like most lenses in this class. If you really want sharp corners as well, they improve once you stop down to f4 and beyond. Contrast levels wide open are great, although it does seem that you lose a little bit of it at the very far telephoto focal length, out at 100mm for example, but if you stop down to f4, it comes back pretty easily. And this is something that again is pretty typical with most f2.8 zooms. Lateral chromatic aberration is well controlled, but loca or longitudinal chromatic aberration is visible with this lens. You'll see some color fringing on autofocus high contrast areas, especially wide open. Barrel distortion is mild on the wide side at 35mm, but then as you zoom in, it does turn into a little bit of pincushion, the strongest pincushion being out at 100mm. If you leave in-camera corrections on, however, it mostly disappears, but some people shoot only in RAW, so it's important to note. In terms of flare performance, the results were good. This isn't the best performance I've ever seen, but it's also nowhere near the worst I've ever seen. I would say it's pretty good with the included lens hood attached. The bokeh looks nice and smooth with my samples. Out at 100mm, you get more bokeh and subject separation than what you can expect with your standard 24 to 70mm f2.8 zoom. It's not distracting. On rare occasion, there is some small texture to the bokeh balls, but not often. Overall, bokeh performance is solid. In terms of autofocus, this lens uses Tamron's VXD linear motor system, so it is fast, quiet, accurate, and reliable for tracking. Even this video of my daughter swinging at a playground, I was impressed with how well it did. It's not going to do 120 FPS bursts with the newest Sony camera bodies, but that's because Sony doesn't allow third-party lenses to do that. They want you buying their more expensive Sony lenses in order to use their camera fully. And focus breathing is very well controlled, which is a huge plus for this lens if you are shooting video with it. So the question at the end of all of this is, should you buy this over the 28 to 75mm or 24 to 70mm equivalent? Well, here are some side-by-side samples, and let's talk about performance. First, shot at 35mm on both lenses, 35 to 100 is on the left. Center sharpness looks about the same to me. The corners might be a slight edge to the 35 to 100, but again, slight. At 50mm, it's more of the same, essentially identical sharpness in the center, a little darker in the corners, but there seems to be more detail in the corners ever so slightly as well. And here at 75mm, I would say it's a similar result. The lenses are close, but I think the 35 to 100 looks just a tiny bit sharper, not by a huge amount, but just slightly. What I noticed on the 35 to 100 is more vignetting. Here is an example of that at 35mm versus the 28 to 75, and you can clearly see how much brighter the corners and the edges are on the older lens, but sharpness is about the same. When you are taking portraits, background bokeh is nice and smooth with both lenses, and looking at sharpness in the center, there's really nothing here to talk about. Performance is identical, which I would say is a good thing because the 28 to 75mm G2 is a very solid lens optically. The thing I noticed most about this lens compared to the 28 to 75mm is the stronger vignetting wide open, especially out toward 100mm. If you stop down to about f4 or f5.6, it does brighten up those corners quite quickly, but if you shoot wide open a lot, like I do, that is something to know about. That really comes with the territory when you are designing a compact, constant f2.8 zoom, but with a long zoom range. The other thing worth mentioning is with some telephotos, they will have built-in optical stabilization to help you when it's hard to keep the shot steady. This lens, like nearly every other 24-70 lens equivalent out there, has no built-in stabilization, so you will have to rely on your IBIS if your camera has it. In the end, it really depends on how you shoot. If you live below 35mm and you shoot those wide angles very often, the 24mm is still valuable and it saves you from having to swap to another lens. But if your favorite images are between, let's say, 50mm and 100mm, well then this lens starts to make a whole lot more sense. It's obviously a compromise, but for some the extra reach is more valuable than the loss of the wide end. I think this lens makes sense for photographers who already have a wide lens and who shoot portraits regularly and who prefer subject separation over framing with the environment in view, or for those who want a lightweight alternative to the 35-150, because that's really what this lens is. It's not really a replacement, but if you don't want to carry around a massive, super heavy lens that weighs as much as a bag of oranges, the 35-100 really doesn't feel any bigger or heavier than a 24-70. And after using this lens, it has me thinking about my 28-75 G2 that I have. The difference between 28mm and 35mm isn't huge, but the difference between 75mm and 100mm is, and the fact that Tamron managed to give you that extra reach without making the lens any bigger than the typical 24-70 is really what makes this one interesting. And the price of this one is $900 US, which is the same as the 28-75, except now the 28-75 is on sale for around $700. Decisions. Let me know what you guys would do if you were in my shoes. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. Check out the AI Mobot down below and have a great day. Bye-bye.